Jesus is going to Jerusalem and they're afraid. They're astonished. Why would he go there? Because that's where they want to kill him. Jesus is going. They know danger's up ahead. And so they're afraid. And they're astonished. And they're confused. And they're saying, what's this all about? And Jesus is leading the way. He's not going reluctantly. He's not going tentatively. He's leading the way. And he then explains why. Look at the next verse here, or the next sentence. Again, he took the 12 aside because he needed to, because they're astonished and confused, and he told them what was going to happen to him. We are going up to Jerusalem. Yeah, that's right, Jesus, we know. He said, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him and spit on him, flog him and kill him. 3 days later, he will rise. That is the second time Jesus has been this explicit on saying this. He says, I'm going to Jerusalem, I'm going to be killed, whipped, flogged, spit on, disrespected, I will die, and 3 days later I will come back to life. What would you say if someone said that to you? If one of your friends came up to you and said, I just want to let you know, I'm going to Gary, and I'm going to be flogged and spit on and killed, and 3 days later, don't bother coming to my funeral, because 3 days later, I'm going to get back up again. Okay? What words would come out of your mouth when that person says that to you? Words out of my mouth? What? Okay, we could avoid all this by just not going to Jerusalem. You don't need to go through the whole resurrection thing, because, no one's ever done that one before. And it's a little weird to me, but that whole death thing doesn't sound pleasant. Let's just go around Jerusalem. You don't need to go through there anyway. We can just go around it. That's the kind of thing that I would think. And that's what Peter said to Jesus the last time Jesus said these words. Peter said to Jesus, listen, Jesus, we don't need to do this. You don't have to die like this. I'm willing to fight for you no matter what. And then Jesus responds to Peter and rebukes him, says, you're like Satan to me, get behind me. What are they going to say this time? Have they learned their lesson? The two people who speak up are James and John. And they don't rebuke Jesus. They completely bypass what Jesus is saying to ask the most arrogant, prideful question that anyone has ever asked Jesus. It's not even a question, really, as we get to it. Check this out. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. Teacher, you're the genie. Let me rub your lamp. Whatever we ask, I want you to do for me. Talk about an arrogant statement. Jesus just said, I'm going to die, and then I'm going to rise again. They don't ask anything about the rising again. They don't ask anything about the death. They don't ask anything about Jerusalem. They just say, by the way, Jesus, you're going to Jerusalem, right? And they know he's going to eventually be the king, or at least they believe that. And so they're like, okay, well, if he's going to die, we need to get something out of this right now. And they say, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. How arrogant. And Jesus says this, what do you want me to do for you? They replied, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory. So when the kingdom thing happens, whenever it happens, James wants to be over there and I want to be over here. Or either way, I could sit on that side and he could sit over. It's cool. We're cool. Just, whichever way you want to do it, Jesus, one of us on your right, one of us on, you pick. You pick, we'll be cool. And Jesus says, you don't know what you're asking. Can you drink the cup I drink or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with? We can, they answered. What? We can. Do you know what Jesus said there? Jesus said, can you drink the cup? That means, can you do what I'm supposed to do? Can you experience this? Remember when he's standing there with his disciples and he passes out the bread and the cup? and he's drinking this cup as the last thing he's doing with them. He says, I'm not going to eat this meal together with you until I eat it with you in my Father's kingdom. This is the last time I'm doing this. The last time Jesus picks up this cup, the last time he's ready to drink it, the last time he gives it to them and they're supposed to drink it with him, he says these words, this cup is the new covenant in my blood. For Jesus, the cup is a symbol of his death. He says, can you drink it? Can you drink it? Or the baptism. This is the first time Jesus is connecting the word baptism with a death, burial, and resurrection thing. Because he just said he's going to die. He just said he's going to rise again. And then he says, can you be baptized like I'm going to be baptized? Now, these guys had already been dunked. Jesus' followers at this point in time had already been baptized with water. And so now Jesus is clearly speaking about something else. He says, can you be baptized like I'm going to be baptized? Can you be buried like I'm going to be buried? Can you come back up like I'm going to come back up? Can you do that? Can you do that? And they say, yeah, bring it on. We can. Arrogance. Jesus said to them, you will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I'm baptized with. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they've been prepared. Now, the way I've been reading this is the way I always used to read this. Like Jesus is somehow irritated with them. Like they've asked this completely arrogant question. And so Jesus is responding and he's like, can you drink what I drink? Can you be baptized like I'm going to be baptized? Come on. You want to be glorified? Bring it on. Let's put our accomplishments next to each other and see who comes on top. That's the way I used to think about this. But I've changed my mind. Because Jesus is doing something different here. See, what Jesus is actually doing is he says, you want to be glorified. You want to experience greatness. So I'm going to ask you a simple question. If you want to receive the same kind of greatness I'm going to receive and sit with me, are you willing to suffer the same kind of suffering I'm going to suffer? Are you willing to sacrifice the same kind of sacrifice I'm going to sacrifice? I don't believe Jesus here is being irritated or frustrated with them. I think he's just laying out an equality. Greatness is here, sacrifice is here. If you want greatness, you need to sacrifice. In fact, that's our first point for today if you want to write it down. Great honor comes from great sacrifice. Now, we kind of intuitively understand this. We understand all the different hero stories of the person who would rush into harm's way, rush into a dangerous situation, take some major risk and fight some major fight. And then they're the hero. They're the ones that get great honor. Just this last week, I read this story about a kid from Vietnam. His father fought in the Vietnam War as a Vietnamese soldier along the side of American soldiers. So he was on our side during that whole process. His family is a Christian family, and I think they were trying to fight for the freedom of their home country. Anyway, this boy was then brought to America by an aunt and an uncle who adopted him here and helped him to become an American citizen or whatever it takes. And then he joined the Marines. He joined the Marines here in America to fight with Americans. And in the process of being in the Marines, he was an amazing testimony of faithfulness to God, faithfulness to his family, loving other people, being generous to other people. In fact, he went over to Iraq, came back, and then volunteered for a second round. Went over there to Iraq the second time. And here was one day with a group of guys, about 20 guys or so with him, and he saw off in the distance a car that was loaded up to be a bomb, heading towards them or something. He grabbed his gun and ran at the car, firing as much as he can to trigger the bomb on the car so that it would blow up before it reached all these other people. And it did, and it killed him. 350 people showed up at his funeral. Many military personnel to talk about how he had made a difference in their lives and how he had saved their lives. And that fellow, his name, if I can pronounce it right, is Bin Nyok Le. He is buried in Arlington National Cemetery with great honor. But there's something different about that kind of honor. We know that intuitively. We feel that intuitively. It makes sense to us. There's something different about that compared to what Jesus is talking about. Because see, that guy, even though his act was incredibly sacrificial, and even though his act was incredibly honorable, it was a spur of the moment, heat of the moment, risk-taking event where he didn't know how this was going to turn out. He didn't know what was going to happen. And so he ran knowing what he should do, taking that risk, but not knowing really the future. Spur of the moment, risk-taking kind of thing. And the great risk is really what we're thinking about. When we honor people, we don't care if they die. We care if they took the risk. And then we give them honor. Jesus is talking about something different. See, for Jesus, he's planning to go to Jerusalem. It's a long walk. He's talking about a slow, premeditated decision to give up his life for someone else. Slow, premeditated, and avoidable decision to give up his life for someone else. So what Jesus is talking about is somehow deeper than our common understanding. In order to get deeper, we have to read a little further. Keep going with me. Verse 41. Verse 41. When the 10, the other guys, heard about this, they became indignant with James and John, just like you would. Because, I mean, after all, James and John just called shotgun. They just went up to Jesus and were like, Jesus, we want to sit on your right and your left. And these other guys are like, shoot, why didn't we think of that? You know, maybe they thought that they deserved it and they were indignant with James and John because James and John were so cocky and arrogant that they would ask Jesus such a question. Maybe that's what they were thinking. Maybe they were just upset that James and John got there first. You know, my kids play the shotgun game, and we have a rule on how it works. And the rule is that if they see the car, they can yell shotgun. If they don't see the car, they're not allowed to say shotgun unless I say the magic phrase, and the magic phrase is to the car. If I say to the car, that means get it on, and one of the kids will be like shotgun. So now I've got them really, really habited up, I guess I could say. If I say, maybe you could try this sometime, but if you see one of my kids running around and you just go to the car, one of them will probably go shotgun. Like what just happened? Like it's a Pavlov dog response or something like that. We've trained him well. But anyway, so we do the shotgun kind of thing. We do the shotgun game because I had a Jeep that didn't have airbags in it. And so even though the kids are little, they could sit in the front seat and all that stuff. I sold the Jeep. That's a point of tears for me, but that's another story. So anyway, we do the shotgun thing. And when one kid calls shotgun, the other kid immediately calls shotgun as if